The next concept we're going to address is positive connections or interactions. Positive connections is the one area that the fire service is pretty good at. There's almost no other profession where the necessity of working closely as a team is so obvious. There's no way for first responders to be successful if they haven't devised ways to effectively communicate, receive, and utilize support from their coworkers and supervisors. From a scientific standpoint, you might be surprised to know that the best predictor of job satisfaction and engagement is the perceived social support. If leaders embrace these simple elements of positive connections in a systematic way and strongly encourage all of our members to get involved, we'll see some real positive outcomes. Tom, leaders in organizations that promote this concept of social support create powerful supervisory relationships. Tell us how these relationships have helped improve morale and wellness in your organization.
So in a word, I would say the key is communication. And what I mean by that is, in a world today where we're so disconnected, I believe, in the fire service, just because of the concept of team that I spoke about earlier is so important, we have to make sure that supervisors and leaders are able to communicate down to their people, but just as importantly, we have to enable our folks to communicate upward as well. So when the organization has a message to transmit, I think it's very important that the senior leaders in an organization have a mechanism or several mechanisms to make sure that the message gets disseminated all the way down to the lowest level in the organization. And we also have to allow for feedback from the lower levels in the organization back up to the supervisors, so that message received, or do we need to change the message? Do we need to modify the message? So I think it's connection all the way down and all the way up and all the different levels. So from senior leadership to battalion leadership, from battalion leadership to company commanders or the captains, from the captains down to the lieutenants and then to the firefighters. And if we make sure that everybody is connected in both directions, I also think that what's important is this notion of officer solidarity. Everybody's got to be on the same page. So do the company commanders necessarily agree with senior leadership on the message? And if not, we need to know that before that message gets sent down to the lower level of the organization. So it's all about communication in both directions.
So that communication is what's going to create that connectedness. Everyone wants to feel heard. Everyone wants to be noticed. So you might not always agree, but there's a way to communicate and make everybody feel heard.
I think that we have to ensure from senior leadership that we let everybody know that everybody's voice is important. And so when you do that, we build connections. We build connectivity.
Leaders in organizations that promote this concept of social support create powerful supervisory relationships. Research has shown that the supervisor-subordinate relationship is critical for positive morale, health, and many other factors that can have huge implications for an organization. Let's talk about what supervisors can do to help reinforce positive connections. The first thing is to keep the emotional contagion of the workforce as positive as possible. As supervisors, you've undoubtedly noticed how one or two firefighters can bring down a whole shift through their negative attitudes. Supervisors and leaders need to be aware of potential negative social connections and recognize how damaging it can be over time, and commit to taking efforts to correct and change these negative environments. Another very important concept to promote is positive to negative ratio. Remember how we talked about our brains being hardwired to easily register and focus more on negative events? Well, research has been able to quantify the ratio of positive to negative interactions that will predict the success rate of your relationships, both at home and work. For every one negative interaction or event, there needs to be at least 3 positive interactions to overcome and recover from the strain on that relationship. Organizations that fall below a 3-to-1 positivity ratio are much more likely to show poor morale, reduced employee engagement, and diminished productivity. So Dave, as a union leader, can you talk about how you build strong connections with leadership teams and with your membership?
Yeah, I think this concept is particularly important in the post-Janus world where everywhere is right to work now. So it's really from union leadership to rank and file, like it has to be, you have to begin to build a relationship with your members. Right? So that's that connectedness piece. You know, it's about doing more than just handling grievances, servicing contract, et cetera. It's about, as the chief said, communications, and also building that relationship where if you have, a member who is sick or you have a member whose family member is sick, like, the local can do a lot more things than the fire department can do officially in a lot of those areas. And so that building that relationship with our members where if you fall on hard times, whether it's on the job or off the job, we're the organization that's going to be there to help you get through that. And so you have to be people-centered, membership-centered, and that's part of that. If the executive board is membership-centered, and then as a local president, I need to make sure that my executive board is that they're healthy too, right? We're tasked with taking care of our membership, but when you look inside your leadership team with your local or your state association or whatever, if there's somebody who has a health issue or they have a family issue, they need to be able to communicate that, and other folks step in to take their workload so we can continue to do the work of the union, which again it's all about our members. It's all about taking care of our members and their families. So that connectedness really, again, I think in the post-Janus world is critical for the success of any IAFF local.
So for your union leadership organization to be successful, your team has to be connected. You have to be, sending the same message, right? Like Tom was talking about. And then just those little things that show your membership how much you appreciate them can make a world of difference.
Absolutely. Somebody may not remember, oh, we won this percentage raise, or,
Right.
Or this is what the political action is that we're engaged in right now. They may not remember those things, but they're going to remember when you showed up at the hospital.
Right.
They're going to remember when you were there for them when they had a difficult time. It's not always about what you're telling them, and we're telling them a lot as union leaders. Political action, being engaged with negotiations, whatever that is. They may not remember what we tell them. They're going to remember how we made them feel, right? And if we made them feel that we were invested in them,
Right.
that their local is invested in them, that's a connectedness that helps the local and helps the union all the way around. We're doing the right thing by our members. And we're going to be successful in other areas when we build that loyalty.
So research has actually shown that poor morale, reduced employee engagement, and diminished productivity happens when an organization falls below what we actually have as a 3-to-1 ratio in positive connections. So what that means is that for every one bad interaction that we have to have 3 positives to counteract it. How tough is that to achieve in your department? And do you have any ideas of how you could help to improve that ratio?
Right. So, when we're in the firehouse and we're responding to emergencies, we can't expect that our customers, the citizens we serve, are always going to provide us with that positive feedback or that positive relationship. So we've got to build that ourselves. We can't rely on them to do that. We've got to rely on each other to create those opportunities to have those positive reinforcements. And that can be anything, really. It doesn't have to be a huge organizational thing. It could be, after a particularly difficult call or, a working structure fire, like stopping by and getting milkshakes for everybody. Or, food always helps.
Food helps.
That's a good one. But telling somebody, especially if you're an officer, good job. good job. I mean, that I think goes a long way. And I think organizationally, you can have that recognition. One particular incident on our job where we had everybody did everything right, and we still had multiple fatalities. And the next shift, our command staff brought everybody that was on that incident in, and the first thing they said was, "Good job, we are proud of you." And I think that really resonated with all the members there. So organizationally, we can provide those, and then I think individually we need to be able to provide those too on a daily basis, because that 3-to-1 can be really hard to achieve.
Right. So Tom, what kind of strategies can you implement to create positive connections from the top down and the bottom up perspective?
I think you have to make sure that you have frequent communication at all levels of the organization. So from senior leadership to mid-management, middle leadership, regular correspondence, regular face-to-face communications, because again, in a world where we're disconnected now because of email and social media, we don't do a lot of face-to-face communication. So we need to have more of that and more of an opportunity for people to have conversations. So from senior leadership to middle leadership, regular meetings, regular face-to-face communications. And then down on the street level, on the boots on the ground level, I think it's important for chief officers that are working in the field to make sure that they're visiting their fire stations, they're sitting in the kitchen with the firefighters, listening to what is on their mind. That was the favorite part of my job when I was a chief in the field. Sitting around the kitchen table and just listening to the troops tell me what was on their mind. If they had questions about what was going on in the organization, if I had the answer, I would give it to them. If I did not, I would say, I don't know, but I will get back to you. And I always made sure I got back to them with an answer, one way or the other. And so I think it's all about personal relationships. It's personal communication. The more that you sit and talk to people, the more connected you become. It's just, that's human nature, I believe. So it's just talking to people, talking to one another, and not being afraid to talk to one another. So sometimes I think we have a tendency as leaders, everybody's different, but people can be intimidated by leadership sometimes, depending on how they come across. It's just a matter of having conversations and talking face to face and being honest with one another, learning from one another. That's, I think, something that we could take in our personal lives as well. Communicating, just sitting and talking, and I think that creates connections just naturally.
So investing in each other, time and energy, building connections, relationships.
It's a personal investment,
Yeah.
and chief officers, and I believe, in my opinion, that the most important person in the fire service in the fire station is the company commander or the captain, whoever the leader is of that firehouse. They set the tone on what their expectations are, but they also let the troops know that they can always come to me and speak to me and let me know what's going on. And then at the chief officer level, having that connection with the line level troops too is very, very important. And Dave mentioned about simple thank you.
Yeah.
One little word, 2 words, thank you. And that sometimes that they'll remember that. You know, an old mentor of mine used to say, they may not remember what you said to them, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And Dave said that before. And that creates connection.